This guy has some serious rage issues.
Has he tried anger management?
Yeah, but it didn't work. Anger management.
The show is based on the movie?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How many of you were able to keep your kittens alive over the weekend? Okay, so stop doing this one.
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Ashton.
It's all wrong for you. I need you back, and I need you back now.
I don't think.
Don't think.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso. And in the past on this channel, I made a video talking about the day 2.5 Men died. And that the culprit behind it was none other than Charlie Sheen in the beach house with the tiger blood. I've also made a follow-up video talking about Charlie Sheen's time on his next show, Anger Management, where I spoke mostly about some of the things that happened behind the scenes. Which is why today, I'm here to talk to you about that very show, and what happened in front of them. For this video, I'm only going to be talking about the show's first season, so unfortunately for me, there will be more videos about the show, which is, highly upsetting, because that means I have to subject myself to this, again, repeatedly. There's 100 episodes, so buckle up. The show came about during Charlie's mental breakdown and after his public firing from 2.5 Men. A time when nobody can look away from the train wreck that was Charlie Sheen. So this was one of the most overhyped shows out at the time.
Charlie Sheen died and went to FX. It's anger management!
Less to do with the fact that it was a follow-up to a third-rate Adam Sandler movie, and more to do with the fact that Charlie Sheen basically guaranteed it attention. So while butts were put in seats, were the owners of said butts satisfied?
We'll find out today!
Charlie Sheen plays Charlie, which is a sentence that really just tells you what type of show this is. A Charlie Sheen show. Charlie is an anger management therapist who suffers from anger management problems. 'Cause, you know, I guess you gotta fight fire with fire. Which, by the way, side note, never do. You do not fight fire with fire, you fight it with water. Fighting fire with fire is not gonna bode well for anybody. I don't know who made that phrase, but they clearly didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. He's out here counseling others on their anger issues, while he's actively seeking counseling for his own. It's a real do as I say, not as I do type scenario.
I punched a hole in the door because I couldn't get a line one day, and I was so frustrated, and I went, and so of course the only damage on our set is done by the therapist.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I hope people at home aren't really, listening to what he's saying, because obviously they'll never get better.
He's also involved with his colleague and personal therapist, Kate. And I'm pretty sure, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure there are at least guidelines and maybe even laws made against that. This is just straight up unprofessional, unethical behavior in the workplace. Which also might be the title of Charlie Sheen's autobiography, Unprofessional, Unethical Behavior in the Workplace.
Wow, winning.
If there's anything you need to know about the show, it's that it's all about Charlie. And look, I get it. I know that he's the main character and the attraction to the show. But I wasn't expecting him to be the whole fucking show! There are so many other characters in this series. You have Charlie's sarcastic ex-wife, Jennifer, his daughter, Sam, who is inflicted with OCD.
Everything's fine. I know I'm new, but this is weird, right?
His neighbor, Michael, who doesn't know boundaries.
Get me your phone number and we'll call it even.
Forget it, she's here by court order.
I like a fixer-upper.
The anger management group he counsels in his home, which consists of the narcissistic hot chick Lacey.
Bad enough that my mother makes me work to get my trust fund check. But the job starts in the morning. Have you ever woken up in the morning?
The human doormat who likes to be stepped on, Jack.
Nolan, what do you think about the fact that Ed just called you a pussy?
I didn't hear that.
Ed?
Pussy. It's probably right.
Side note, I said his name was Jack, and it is, but he's mostly referred to as Nolan, so it was a very long work night. So, my apologies. The angry old man set in his ways who spends most of his time yelling at clouds, Ed.
Into that head and this
called me a racist and a homophobe.
The self-centered and flamboyant Patrick.
Everyone's experiencing emotions but me. Why can't I feel anything real? This isn't even real.
He has a second anger management jail group consisting of characters who don't really play into the plots for the most part. Then there's this old bartender who's always flirting with Charlie and, well, just about everybody else.
And where do you live, Charlie?
If you're looking for an address, it's not gonna happen.
There is going to come a night when you're going to beg me to go home with you.
Oh, and later in the season, they introduced Charlie's old school father as a series regular. And none of that, literally none of that, matters. Because in the end, they're all just window dressing. Each one of these characters only exists to cause the occasional conflict, but also to put over just how awesome of a guy Charlie is.
You're a good therapist.
Thank you, Charlie. I love you, man.
Lacey, you can't do that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to do this.
I think my favorite part of all this is that, despite being a therapist, his sessions with his groups are less about helping and diagnosing their problems, and much more about addressing his. It's less of a, am I teaching them, or are they teaching me type of deal, and more of a, yeah, enough about you, more about me, sort of arrangement.
You know, I'm going through something similar right now. I lost something and I'm having some emotions about it.
The character comes off as a raging narcissist. I wonder how Charlie Sheen managed to pull that off. I mean, what range? If you Googled Vanity Project, you would find the definition to Vanity Project, which is...
Vanity projects, or vanity productions, are those creative works that are ostensibly showcases for someone's talents as an actor, director, writer, singer, and/or composer but fail miserably to achieve their goal. See example, Charlie Sheen in Anger Management.
The show is almost like a part 2.5 of his last show. It's all very familiar, but desperately trying to be different. You know, Charlie Sheen is still irresistible to women, and unable to be addressed as anything but Charlie.
Charlie!
It's not what you think. She's the maid. I slipped. It just happened. I was drunk. I'm sorry. Please don't leave me.
Charlie, it's 2012.
Oh, right. We're divorced.
Although this time he's not wearing bowler shirts and cargo shorts, so... it's an improvement.
This is a joke.
I think what's really clear when watching the show is what it is. It's a Charlie Sheen vehicle made only to capitalize on his growing fame/infamy. There really wasn't a whole lot of thought that went into this show, besides profit. The show is less focused on creating its own world with interesting, well thought out and developed characters, and much more focused on trying to profit off of Charlie Sheen's public mental breakdown. Constant jabs at 2.5 Men and creator Chuck Lorre take precedent over in-world punchlines and plots.
You can't fire me. I quit. Think you can replace me with some other guy? Go ahead. It won't be the same. I didn't come to embarrass you.
Then why are you wearing that shirt?
You may think I'm losing, but I'm not. I gotta stop wearing these anyway. They don't breathe. They stink. I think I'll just chuck it.
The whole show is really just meant to be a wink and a nod to Sheen's personal life, which is why his real-life ex-wife Denise Richards shows up and plays a one-off love interest, or why his real-life father Martin Sheen plays his character's father, Martin Goodson, and why his friend and former Spin City co-star Michael Boatman plays his friend and neighbor, Michael, or why his daughter is named Sam, which is also the name of his real-life daughter. I guess it wasn't enough for Charlie to be Charlie. He also needs to sign up his closest friends and family and have them play themselves as well. It's good to know that we're not just dealing with narcissism here. We're also dealing with nepotism. The jokes in this are less centered around what's relevant to the plot at hand, and what's more relevant to Charlie Sheen's actual life. The issue with doing this is that if you're going into the show with a limited knowledge of Charlie Sheen, it's not gonna hit the same for you.
My ex can be a little difficult. Nuts. A total maniac. A real whack job.
We get it. Do some Brando.
Are you an assassin?
I'm a soldier.
You're neither. You're an errand boy.
To make real-life jabs at the lives and careers of your actors is fine, but not when it's the sole point of your whole product. The real problem here is that the show doesn't survive on its own. I get it, it's meta, but That's all it is. What I do have to give the show credit for is that it does have a very diverse cast of characters. And I mean that in every way, shape, and form. People of all different sexual orientations, ethnicities, backgrounds, mental illnesses, and behavioral disorders are all present in the series. The show is pretty inclusive. But again, they're all overshadowed by Charlie, who is, of course, the center of the universe. These characters have no purpose for existing outside of either validating or butting heads with Charlie, including Kate, who I think is supposed to be our female lead, but she's really not around long enough to even be considered one. I wouldn't even say supporting, she's reoccurring at best. She doesn't show up in every episode, she shows up in most of them, but she doesn't stick around for that long for the most part. Her character has the most potential out of any of these characters. She's the sardonic voice of reason, the sex-addicted therapist who not only woes Charlie, but challenges him constantly to better himself, as a therapist and as a man. She's a flawed individual who's trying to help heal other flawed individuals. That's a genuinely interesting premise that they do next to nothing with, so... Look, I get that Charlie was the cell for 2.5 Men. I do. I don't want this whole video to be like, oh, he's making it all about himself, or they made the whole show is centered around him. But understand this. Despite Charlie being the cell for 2.5 Men, there were other important characters on that show outside of him. You had his cheapskate, broke leech of a brother to play off him.
Wow. The legendary lost wallet of Alan Harper. Oh my. There's no money in here.
Yet his nephew learned lessons and grow as a person until he stopped growing and stopped learning and became a potato. You had various ex-girlfriends, each different from the last. His brother Alan had love interests. There were ex-wives, there were best friends, there was so much that contributed to 2.5 Men. And what FX did is they took the centerpiece of that show and they tried to put a spotlight on it. What they didn't understand is that without the right backdrop behind it, it just doesn't work. You can't isolate one part of a show and then expect to have the same outcome from that isolated part. It never works. I mean, case in point, 2.5 Men. You know, hey, Ashton Kutcher was really great in that 70s show. But you take that one isolated part of that show and then you put it into this one, and what happened?
Did that go the way you thought it was going to go? Nope.
We don't get a whole lot of time to know these characters, as the vast majority of the show's runtime is devoted to Charlie Sheen, with these characters just randomly passing through his life whenever it's convenient or integral to the plot. We don't learn that much about the world surrounding Charlie, because it's his world and everyone else is just living in it. When watching this, I wasn't really picking up the characters' names, just their roles in Charlie Goodson's life. Oh look, that's ex-wife, that's daughter, that's neighbor, and that's therapist slash fuck buddy. And that's it. What's sad is that this show is actually well cast, and a lot of these characters seem interesting, and they seem like they'd be even more interesting in a competent show. But instead they're here. It's also not particularly well written. I wouldn't say it's unwatchable or even terrible, it's just kind of bland. It's like the white rice of sitcoms. Like it's not doing you any harm, but it's just kind of doesn't really have its own unique flavor. Just tasteless. It feels like when they were writing the show, they only ever turned in their first draft for each and every episode. Which I wouldn't be surprised, because they were kind of rushing to capitalize off Charlie Sheen as soon as they could, so who knows, maybe that was the process. Could be. It certainly would explain a lot. The episodes, for the most part, are pretty formulaic. There aren't any season-long plots or story arcs that carry out throughout the episodes. It's more of a conflict of the week type show. And the thing is that none of them particularly stand out. But that's the problem with this show, is that nothing ever stands out. It is so aggressively mediocre in each and every way. The show is filmed in a flat and boring manner, which, you know, is nothing new with sitcoms, but sometimes people like to try. Not here, but sometimes. The scripts consist of lame, half-assed jokes. Problems are solved at a rapid rate, leading to conflict and resolution both feeling forced. And that laugh track, holy shit, that laugh track.
It gets a big laugh when they add it later.
There are very few times when a laugh track is actually in good taste. A live studio audience? That's all fine and well. But a laugh track? No thank you. But to abuse it the way that this series does is unacceptable. Having fake laughter constantly interject itself into your show, padding out the runtime, and interrupt the actors in between lines is terrible. And it's even worse here because the fake canned laughter, like the laughter is at like a 10, and the joke was at a 2.
You taste like home.
You taste like spaghetti.
It's the garlic, I sweat it. And you are making me sweat.
You know what I mean? Like it does not fit. You did not say something that funny, and no amount of dead people's laughs is going to convince me otherwise. No, not happening. I should clarify that despite what it sounds like, I don't actually hate the show. But the fact that Sheen was praising this project as something that would compete with 2.5 Men, and would be bigger and better than his time on that show, is really laughable. More laughable than any of the jokes in this show. Thank you. Yeah, all right.
Boom! You stink!
Okay. The show's not bad, it's not great. On its best day, it is 2.5 Men light. It's not something I would ever go out of my way to watch if I didn't have the job that I do. But, you know, if it came on TV, I probably wouldn't turn it off until I was about like 3 episodes deep. It should have been more. But I can't really cast my final judgment on it just yet, because I've only watched the first season right now. For me, anger management is just alright. At best. Maybe the show picks up. Maybe it even evolves into something more. I sure hope it does. This is a whole new experience for me, and I wish I wasn't experiencing it, so thanks guys. The show has a lot of problems, but it also has a lot of promise. The characters are played by talented actors and actresses, for the most part. I don't think the casting is bad at all here. Martin Sheen is surprisingly fun and seems like he gives half of a fuck. Unlike his son and series lead, who seems like he could care less. Showing a divorcee relationship that isn't full of hate and resentment is different for a sitcom, so that was kind of pleasant. Portraying Charlie as a loving father was also not something we're used to seeing, and probably neither were his children. One thing that's kind of weird for me is Charlie and his ex-wife Jennifer. I think the two actors worked really well together and they had a believable chemistry. But that was the only believable thing about her performance. I don't know, it just comes off as very Full Housey, which contrasts greatly from everything else that's going on here.
How about a little support? I'm just trying to broaden my horizons.
Okay, let's see how broad your horizons get.
I do like the Kate character, but the show could use a bit more of her. If they take the time to flesh her out or dedicate more screen time to her, I can really see that character connecting to an audience. Ironically enough, not dissimilar to how Charlie Harper connected with an audience. She could work like that if she was better developed. Boy, I sure hope they invest more time into her as the episodes go on. Oh, what's that? She was eventually fired from the series? Oh yeah, of course she was. FX ordered the first season of 10 episodes, and stated they'd follow it up with 90 episodes guaranteed should the first season be a success. And despite beyond negative reviews and being the punchline without a laugh track, FX still considered the show a success. Mainly because, like I said before, Charlie Sheen at the time was must-see TV. The guy was a complete train wreck that not only could you not turn away from, but you actively went out of your way to watch. Those who made anger management really didn't have to do a whole lot to capture people's attention, so they didn't. Their whole creative blueprint was a 2-step plan that said, Step 1, hire Charlie Sheen, Step 2,
money, money, money.
Maybe the next season improves some of these problems. I mean, I hope they do because I still have 90 episodes left, but I personally wouldn't recommend going out of your way to watch the show. Anger management is anger-inducing, and as of now, not worth the time of its potential audience.
Oh, the anger sharks are swimming in my head.
Goose fraba. Goose fraba. How do you feel?
Better.
Anyway, with all that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Oh, and if you guys enjoyed the video and you want to see me check out Season 2, let me know in the comments section by saying, we want Part 2. And a half.
Winning.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.
I win here and I win there. Now what?
That's all, folks.